Here's my beef with yoga and why I've actually started practicing yoga a lot more at home as opposed to going to classes. So, this is firstly not me throwing shade on any yoga teachers or anything of the sort. I am guilty of doing these things myself. So, I want to point out firstly that I am not throwing shade on anyone. All I am doing is once again talking about my own opinion. So, firstly, I think it's really important to point out a lot of the time, unless you have actually gone to do your yoga teacher training, most people just think of yoga as exercise. And something I've noticed over and over again when I'm going to yoga classes is actually that it's just feeling more and more like an exercise class when I go. Does this sound familiar? Inhale up, exhale down, inhale this, exhale this, inhale this, exhale this. But it's so fast, right? I want to point something out if you're not clear on what yoga actually is. The word yoga itself is derived from the Sanskrit word yuj. Might be pronouncing that wrong, apologies if I am. But this actually means to join or to unite. And it touches on yoga's emphasis of the union between individual consciousness and universal consciousness, the ego and the soul, the body and the mind. Now, to strip this right back without getting too spiritual and woo-woo into this, really you should be moving your body with your breath. And something I am noticing more and more the more I go to classes is it's impossible to do this when a teacher is not giving you the time to actually be in a pose. I always try to teach my students the importance of moving between poses, but also the importance of staying in a pose with your breath and moving at the rate of your own breath. When you were doing sun salutation A, which is one of the first things you learn in your yoga teacher training, the first thing our teacher always pointed out to us was you move to your own breath. I am cueing the class, but you move to your own breath. If I'm going too fast, you slow down. If I am going too slow, you quicken up. You know the sequence, you go with your own breath. But this is nearly impossible to do in yoga classes because I've noticed over and over again, and I'm not saying anything about the yoga teachers, it's not their fault. People are just having to follow these certain patterns because a lot of the time in the Western world, this is what we're seeing. Like many people think of yoga and they think of these Instagram influencers showing off like cool inversions, like headstands and handstands and arm balances. And look, I was one of them people and I love headstands. I love inversions, but I don't love inversions because they look fucking cool. I love inversions because of the chakra they're trying to work on. And I also love them because they force you to be in the present moment, which is what we're constantly looking for in life. But this is what we're doing in yoga. And this is what yoga did for me. It sparked off this stream of consciousness that allowed me to become more present in this present moment because I was marrying my breath to the movement. Now, I love a good, strong, powerful vinyasa class, but I like it when it's guided in a way that allows you to follow your own breath, that you're not completely mimicking what the teacher says, because when a teacher is flying through the poses, and this is awful for new students who've never done yoga, a lot of the time teachers are teaching a yoga class as if everyone understands the Sanskrit words, everyone understands exactly what to do. And I've had clients who come to me who've tried yoga classes and they're like, I absolutely hated that. I'm never doing it again. They just were flying through the class. I was expected to know what they were doing. I feel like I held my breath through the whole thing and I was less relaxed than when I went in. That is not the point of yoga. And if anything, this is actually putting people off going to yoga classes. The first thing I do when I take on a 6-week beginner yoga class is we spend an entire first class just doing sun salutation A, fixing all the cues, but also just trying to get clients to listen to their own breath and to listen to their own body. And I always say to them, yoga is for everybody and yoga is for everybody. My body doesn't look like anyone else's. Your body doesn't look like anyone else's. So what's really important to realize here is that everyone's flows are going to look a little bit different. So people are trying to mimic teachers and they're trying to listen to their cues. And I went to a class the other day and like the teacher was amazing, but like she was flying through the class. I'm a yoga teacher. I understand what she's telling me to do, but we were literally not even in a pose for a breath and she was telling us the next thing. And I get that a lot of people are going to these yoga classes to get a bit of a workout in. That's grand, but that is not the point of yoga. The point of yoga should be that connection between mind, body, soul. That connection on the very first level is between the body and the breath. And if you are going to a class where they are just rushing through the poses, you're completely defeating the purpose of what you're actually there to do, because the whole point of yoga is just not what you're doing on the mat. That's asana, that's physical postures, okay? It's breathing, it's focused gaze, it's all these different things that you do in the class. But the whole point of that, right, is to actually take it off the mat. So when I'm constructing a yoga class, and I am by no means saying that I am an incredible yoga teacher, whatever, like I'm not, I've only done my 200 hours. That's like your bachelor degree in yoga in this day and age. Everyone has their 200 hours. But something that we were taught when we were doing our teacher training is the fundamental guidelines to follow when you're doing a yoga class. And I feel like one thing that is being constantly skipped is the importance of shavasana for an actual extended period of time where you actually just lie at the end, because that is where you reap all the benefits. But like, even I was at the class the other day and she was talking all through shavasana. I was like, our whole point of yoga originally, before any of the physical postures came into play, was meditation. That's all it was. But then after a while, they had to incorporate some physical postures to actually allow the people to get into that meditative state at the end. But that was the whole point of yoga. It was never to do all these postures. It was actually to get into that meditative state at the end. So now we get to that meditative state, which is where you reap the benefits of the class. And now teachers are talking all through shavasana. There's no silence. Like, we need to train our brains to be okay with silence. Like, this is what we're doing in mindfulness meditation. I kind of have a little bit of beef sometimes with guided meditations. They're great at the start, but the goal should be eventually to wean away from guided meditations, because again, it's a story, it's a narrative. You're listening, you're actively listening. When do you have that quiet moment where your brain has the chance to just be still? We get pissed off when we're trying to meditate and stuff like that, because we're like, oh my God, why won't my brain be quiet? And I'm like, we're all listening to stuff 24/7. You can't expect your brain to just stop immediately. But what we can do is practice yoga in a way that's more mindful, where we're moving with our own breath. Every inhale, every movement up is an inhale, but take the full inhale. Every movement down is a full exhale. Take the full exhale. Follow your own body. If something doesn't feel nice, just because a teacher tells you to do it, don't do it. There's a fine line between a slight bit of discomfort to challenge you and all-out pain, which is what people are putting themselves through in some classes just because the teacher said it. Like, a teacher should always point out, I am guiding you on this journey, but you know your body better than anyone. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. And I think something that is really, really important to realize is that if you've never done yoga before and you've gone to a class and you literally felt more stressed leaving it, my one advice to you is this: please don't give up. Find a beginner's class, find a teacher you resonate with, and find someone who is going to embody what yoga is actually. It's not an exercise class. That's just a very small part of it. The whole point of yoga originally was actually to get into that meditative state at the end. And that is really what we should be aiming for. And how we can be conducive to getting that is actually being more mindful and present in our movement and mirroring the breath with the movement.